Hello, and good morning from Eureka Roadhouse, Alaska. This is Black Cloud Travels, and my name is Doris. Frank and I decided yesterday afternoon to quietly boondock along the side of the road, get some rest, and prepare ourselves for our trip to Valdez. While we were camping there, I decided to do a little watercolor painting, and I found these fireweed flowers very pretty, and I managed to get them down on watercolor paper. As you see, we're starting off with a very rainy day this morning, and that's okay. In this episode, we are traveling from Glennallen, Alaska to Valdez in what is described one of the prettiest drives in North America. Now, normally when I edit a video, Frank hands me the raw footage from the cameras, and I edit it, I add music, I speed it up, I slow it down, and then I do the voiceovers. This episode will be a little different. He took the video and he made it his own, and I'm really glad that he did, because he did a great job. We've got the footage that he created. He added some text to it, he sped it up, and that saves me a lot of work. So here we go. This video is going to be about 30 minutes long, and it's made for those who really, really want to go to Alaska. Now, when we were making plans to go to Alaska, we did not have a lot to go on, but we're very grateful to the YouTubers who made the journey ahead of us and gave us the incentive to educate ourselves in preparing for the trip to Alaska. And so I'd like to thank Less Junk, More Journey. I'd like to thank Keep Your Daydream, Outliers Overland, Motorhome Experiment, and Powhana Travels. Thank you for basically empowering us with the information to make our trip to Alaska happen. So, our destination today is a campsite which was introduced to us by the YouTube channel Less Junk, More Journey. Now, in their video on this campsite, we were able to see the campsite, but they did not disclose the name of the campground, and they did not disclose the location of the campground, and I understand why. However, we had to find that campground. Now, coming up is Glennallen, and this is where basically the journey begins. Frank will stop off at the IGA so we can pick up supplies, and the scene cuts and we're at the gas station. Now, the reason this is so important is because while we were at the IGA, Frank went in, got the groceries, I waited in the van with Bobby, and a long procession of ambulances and fire trucks passed by us on the highway, and it never seemed to end. And this was a situation that I knew would not end well. So coming up, we have a very important part of the video for those that want to travel to Alaska. And here we have the warning sign for the Thompson Pass. I'll say that again. We have the warning sign for the Thompson Pass. Now, the reason this is so important is because nobody warned us about the sign for the Thompson Pass. If you miss that pass and you're not paying attention, you could be going nowhere fast, and I'll explain why. Now, Wiki records that the Thompson Pass is a 2,600 foot high gap in the northeast of Valdez, Alaska. It is the snowiest place in Alaska, and it is wondrous to behold. Now, the Thompson Pass sign will tell you whether the pass is open or not open. And this is important because if you don't catch it, you could be driving up to the Thompson Pass and it'll be closed and you've got nowhere to go but back from where you came. And that is quite a detour when you're in Alaska. So Frank explained to me as I was editing the video that he was not paying attention to the sign for the Thompson Pass because no one told him to watch for it. So luckily the Thompson Pass was open. We were able to get by, but I am advising you that if you are in Glennallen and you want to drive to Valdez, pay attention to the sign for the Thompson Pass. Now, interestingly enough, while we were camping in Valdez, we were paying close attention to the weather because it is a very hazardous road, this Thompson Pass, because it is very steep going up and coming down, and you want to have ideal conditions, especially when you're driving a camper. So Frank was paying very close attention to the weather, and we were not really having 100% weather at that time. And I remember distinctly that there was a day or two while we were in Valdez that the Thompson Pass had been closed. Now, on top of this, I remember Frank distinctively several times voicing his concern about being able to go up and down the Thompson Pass safely. It was on his mind a lot, and I wasn't worried. I guess I had a lot of faith in the truck and in Frank's driving capabilities, but he certainly was worried about it. Now, as you've noticed, we've slowed down the speed of the video and we are coming up to a stop. And it was about this time that I realized it's very possible that this is where all the ambulances and fire trucks were headed. My biggest surprise upon stopping here was that no one was rushing. There was nothing at all about helping the people who had been hurt in this accident. In fact, there was a kind of like a surrendered calm about the area and the people who were occupying that space. The second thing that occurred to me was that this spot is 67 miles from where I had first heard the fire trucks and the ambulances whiz behind me while we were sitting at the grocery store. So it had taken them an hour to reach this spot, which kind of is truly scary indeed that they had to wait that long for the help to come. And chances are pretty well it was too late. So 2 nights ago, while we were staying at the Three Bears campground in Wasilla, Alaska, the same place we stayed when we first came to Alaska, I received an email from an aunt telling me that one of my uncles had passed away. Now, this aunt had lived in Alaska since as long as I could remember. She was currently living in Phoenix, Arizona, but she did spend 20, 30 years in Alaska. And so I when I texted her back, I said, "Hey, I'm in Wasilla, Alaska, your old stomping grounds." And I hoped that would make her happy. Now, while we were staying in Valdez, maybe our second or third day, I received a response from her saying, "Wow, you must get in touch with my cousin, who was also her son, who lived in Wasilla, Alaska." And I thought, wow, what a missed opportunity that was, had I been paying more attention. Now, I might have seen this cousin once when I was very young, but I had not seen him since. And I'm just kind of bringing this up to you, that if you will be traveling in areas where you might even remotely believe you've got family, it's always a good idea to reach out and take the opportunity, because had we have made that happen, that would have been magic. So here we are, stopped once again, and that's okay, because this is where we met a wonderful woman who, of course, was directing traffic there, and she was good enough to kind of while away the minutes with us as we waited for our lead car. And we learned that she was originally from Michigan, and it was kind of funny to find out that her winters in Michigan were much worse than her winters in Alaska. So we asked her a few questions, and we tried to describe the campground we were looking for. And she gave us a nice little clue. She said, well, there is a place that sounds a lot like it, and it is behind the airport. Okay, so here we had something to go on. And aside from that, we exchanged names, and one of the fondest things I remember about her is how she repeated our names as we said goodbye. She said goodbye, Doris, Frank, and Bob. I mean, this has got to be one of the best things about traveling, meeting people like that. Now, earlier I had mentioned that it was the video bloggers Less Junk, More Journey that had introduced us to the place where we were hoping to find. And this would be right along a kind of small little lake. And where they stayed, they could ride their kayaks and visit the not too far away glaciers in the water with their beautiful opal blue. And Frank was so inspired by their footage that he went and got himself a kayak from Amazon, and it was delivered, and it lived in our living room for at least 6 months, along with all the other necessities we were buying to help us along our way. So we had the kayak up above us in the storage unit, and we got Frank a life vest as well. And we were so looking forward to getting that kayak in the water. It was one of those bucket list kind of things that Frank wanted to do. So here we are again, waiting for the construction trucks, and that's okay. The roads of Alaska must be maintained. So these things only last 5-10 minutes, maybe 15. And here we go. And as I look at this, I can still remember the awe of looking straight ahead at a glacier. And I really don't think that the colors will do it justice that you see here, because there is a glacial blue that really resonates. So here we are up in the mountains of Thompson Pass in Alaska, and I can only imagine the views that we are missing. But so it goes. That's okay, because I knew we were still in for one heck of a show. And yes, I had read of glaciers, I'd heard of glaciers, I'd seen them on TV. It doesn't quite compare with coming face to face with one. From a distance, they look big, but when you get close to them, they are all-encompassing. And it doesn't take long for you to realize that you're positively smitten with the raw beauty in front of you. It's like something from the dinosaur era. Very lush and very green. It was a very beautiful drive. There are some falls that we'll pass through, one of them being Bridal Veil Falls. The other one might be Horsetail Falls. And once again, I'd like to remind you that if you pay attention, on both the right hand and the left hand side of the roads, you can see pullouts, and this is where you can pull over and camp for the night if you want. It's free. There are sometimes there's washroom facilities there. Certainly there are garbage containers there, and you can make yourself comfortable there and spend the night. And this is of course free of charge. So Frank and I know that we will be boondocking when we get to our campsite in Valdez. There will be no sanitation available, there will be no water available, and we will be on our own. There will be no hookups to electricity. And we are fully mindful of the fact that there is a problem with our water supply container. It is not holding water properly. Frank hasn't quite figured out yet what the problem is, but what we should be able to hold are 40 gallons of water, and while we drive down the road, it just all sloshes out, and we get there with maybe, if we're lucky, 1/3 of a tank full. And this doesn't really bother us too much because we know that we have plenty of drinking water available, and we will go 2 or 3 days without a shower. But that's basically our limit, 2 or 3 days boondocking in one area before you have to fill up with water and take a shower. So, Frank and I are both feeling pretty good right now. We're getting closer to the campground. But there's this weird bang in the air. And it doesn't take us long to figure out that there is a shooting range in the vicinity. And we both think to ourselves, wow, won't that be fun? With Bob and his nervous disposition. But this is something we'll have to face, and Bobby will have to get over. So here we are getting very close to our campground. And all of a sudden, you look up, and there it is. In the far distance, you can see the small little glacier-filled lake. And we have glaciers in the background. And we have campers here, so we're trying to decide where to stay. We don't want to be too far back. We want to be close to the water, but this particular place here looks like it's only for cars, and we don't want to be those people who park their RV where there are supposed to be only cars allowed. So okay, we turn around and try to do it again. And this is very rocky ground here, and every time we pull into a spot, we're rocking back and forth for dear life. So now we've turned around and we're heading back towards the lovely Glacier Lake. And this is kind of like a second level here. And we consider briefly parking behind that camper on the left, but we don't want to be looking at that for 3 days. So we press forward. Now, half an hour after we left, they decided to leave the campground, and that was kind of bad timing on our part. But we move ahead, and we don't want to impinge on anybody's space. And up ahead is a small little row of cars. We don't want to park there and be rude. Oddly enough, a couple of hours later, a C-Class camper pulled up, parked there, and didn't think anything about it, obviously, and that's okay. So we pull off to the right where there's a big, wide, empty space, and we discover we can't camp there either because it is blasted ground. So we decide to park in the back and make that our little space, and we are content to do so. And this brings us to the end of another adventure. We'd like to thank you for joining us on Black Cloud Travels. On behalf of Frank and myself, I invite you to join us again. Until then, goodbye.